Wow, it wouldn't seem so crazy if the government hadn't hid all the Cyclops bones. Hey, it's your old pal John Wheeler, and this is another installment of the vlog of Eternal Stench. I thought it would be fun to sit today and address what I'm going to address, sitting at the makeshift puppet theater that I made for our friend Bill to do his puppets at. I mean, we're not hosting puppet shows here. It's not that Bill just came over under his own volition and was like, I'm gonna do puppets at your house. But I wanted to use puppets in my, I've never thought about it like that videos to illustrate certain points. Basically, I need somebody to yell at because I really like contention. And I have this thing that I've done it on stage for comedy and I've done it in my other videos. And I kind of do it in real life in person where I always kind of play the devil's advocate of whoever I'm arguing with by just doing a funny voice. So I'll be like, hey, you know, I don't think it's good when, you know, killing people happens. And then someone's like, actually, it's really good for people. And I do that, but I'll run it together really fast. And you'll be like, what is your opinion, John? Is killing people good or bad? I cannot tell. You're rambling too fast, and you're always speaking in weird voices for no reason, so it's hard to follow what the fuck you're talking about. So, Bill has puppets. Bill knows how to use puppets, and I have a table and some black curtains. So, you'll see that when that next one comes out, when I finish editing it. But I was also sort of inspired by the fact that the Bigfoot video that we had just put out gained a little ire from the good people of the internet. I think I'd mentioned somewhere that I got my first negative, like, angry hater troll comment that was spelled all wrong on that Bigfoot video. Like, finally, it's not just my friends who are probably mostly anybody who's watching this, but I've learned about search engine optimization and all these other boring things that you don't care about, so that people interested in Bigfoot get brought to my video, which is, I'll be honest, it is about Bigfoot and it's not about Bigfoot. It's a philosophical thought, just kind of a little thought experiment or something. I don't know. It's more about indigenous people's oral histories and the way that they hand things down and how very accurately they're handed down, but that, like, time doesn't matter. So I mentioned in the video that it's kind of not important whether something happens 100 years ago or yesterday, because really, in the grand scheme of things, if you are living in this unchanging sort of civilization of being nomads and whatever, but you're not improving upon technological things at a very quick rate. So most people's lifetimes are pretty identical anyway. And so therefore, if you see something terrifying in the woods, you keep telling that story forever because it might still be there. Like, just going, I haven't seen it lately is actually kind of irresponsible, because if you just stop telling the monster story and everyone forgets about it, they're going to get caught with their pants down when the monster comes and gets you. And then what the monsters may be. The video is also about perspective. Like, people have been around for a long time, and there used to be a lot more very big, dangerous animals that came after people. Not afterwards, but they would try to get us, they would try to eat us. Like, people are always like, how come there's no giant apex predators that regularly, if you run afoul of a bunch of hippos, but they're not even trying to eat you, they're just really territorial. Maybe a lion will, or whatever, or like a polar bear or something like that. But you don't really see just large animals on land and huge birds and all these things, but they used to exist, and they stopped existing because they attacked us, and then we invented language and weapons and cooperation, and we murdered them into extinction. We don't have eagles that can swoop down and carry away a toddler anymore, specifically because that would always happen, and then we killed them all. Now there aren't any anymore. The most recent example of that was some kind of California grizzly bear. I'm not like a nature historian or anything, but they're up into the time of actual, like, rifles and things when white folks were moving into California. There were these bears that would regularly attack and just kill and eat people. It'd be like if you were in LA now and you were just going to your car and a grizzly bear just tackles you out of nowhere and you don't get to go to work at Starbucks that day. So maybe that's okay. No, you don't want to get eaten by bears. That's very bad. But yeah, people murdered those into extinction. That was just pretty recent. But things like that have been happening for hundreds of thousands of years, if not a million years or whatever, with human beings. And so the idea, again, the video is not about cryptids or Bigfoot shit. Not like really. It's just about the idea that we have lingering things to this day that stick with us because of the accuracy of those the histories that are passed down, and then how dangerous big monsters were out there. Like if there was a thing like a Gigantopithecus that had, you know, the 10-foot tall ape that a lot of people think might have been Bigfoot, and if that thing had the temperament of like chimps or something like that, came after us, like we'd be telling pretty terrifying stories of Bigfoot type things coming out of the woods, and it's like those stories wouldn't go away quickly. Or in my other allusion just to that, it was perhaps a big dude, because people were always capable of growing to freakishly tall sizes, but the average used to be a lot shorter. So you could be like a 7'4" person wandering around in a sea of people who were like 4'10", and if you came and decided to get them, I mentioned that all in the video. But it's about perspective and time and the weird game of telephone that is sort of like the way things get passed around. And also the funny way that works in that, you know, the legends were probably like verbatim for, you know, like 200,000 years, and then you get to the settlers being like, I heard tell there was monsters out in the woods, and then it immediately goes from being perfectly preserved to being all garbled, and then you get these stories of these things. And so I feel like that's important to point out. I was going to talk more about Bill and the puppets, but oh right, yeah, I only mentioned that because I don't want to wait for weird comments to come in and argue with people in the comments. I kind of want to have things that represent those dissenting voices that I know will be there. And Bill does their voices, and I throw like hammers and scream at them, and I think it's fun too. It's better than just me talking to myself. It's me going slowly insane, recreating some sort of Mr. Rogers thing, where Mr. Rogers' temperament is a little bit more like that of Alex Jones, and it's just kind of yelly and insane, but I feel like that's a good lane. Not a fan of Mr. Jones' his messaging, but I just like to yell. If I'm trying to go for anything here, my idea is, what if Carl Sagan delivered most of his teachings and thoughts with like a vein coming out of his forehead while he screams at the top of his lungs and brandishes a revolver like Hunter S. Thompson? I think that makes for fun YouTube, and the Bigfoot one wasn't really like that yet, but I'm working on that. I'm trying to make it more interesting. But here's what I've done. I saved Meredith, actually, a friend of hers, posted the Bigfoot video on a bunch of Bigfoot enthusiast Facebook groups. Again, it's not about Bigfoot, really. It's just there, and I understand how search terms work, so I could trick people into, you know, with a title like, we found Bigfoot, and like, what is this about? And then they get stuck with this thoughtful video I made that's a little funny and kind of interesting and whatever. And has lots of pictures in it and stuff. But Bigfoot is kind of a contentious thing for people in that it's the people on those groups, I feel a lot of them missed the point. Like they weren't like, huh, that's an interesting thought experiment. Now, to be fair, some of them did. Some of them were like, yeah, that's literally, oh, it's called I've Never Thought About It like that. Some people actually mentioned, they're like, I said that out loud and then laughed when I saw the title. And a friend I made on Reddit, who has a YouTube channel also, I'll put a link in the description. He said that same thing, and he was someone I just was talking to about making comedy stuff on YouTube, and he went and just looked at the video like, oh yeah, and he was like, I never thought about it like that. Oh, and I was like, oh, it feels so good. And I told him that. I was like, yeah, man, that's exciting. That's why I named it that on purpose, so that would happen, or that was the hope anyway. It's like it's like a catchy song. I don't know. But anyway, so there was like a lot of positive response, and it got a lot of views and everything, and I'm just starting out, but that's what you want. But Bigfoot is like a weird religious thing to some people, where they clearly didn't watch the whole video, and they just wrote on these Facebook groups and stuff where Meredith's friend posted it, all these angry things. They're like, well, you know, I've actually met Bigfoot. You know what? I should read them. Why am I just guessing at what they said? I think... I saved them here. That was pretty insightful. I liked it. Oh, that was a positive one. All right. Well, we'll get to. Oh, here's the one under it. All right. I remember this one. This was funny. This guy says the existence of giants is common knowledge. I don't know if he means giants just like kind of big people, because that seems dumb to bother pointing that. Yeah, we all know that there's tall guys out there. Like, yeah, I do. We've all seen the porn with the really tall ladies beating up the little guys and stuff, and it's, yeah, we know that exists. Unless he means, no, we all know that there's real giants, and John's an idiot for just suggesting that perhaps there were tall people back when everyone was short. I don't know. I don't know what that means. Then he says, also, with this line of thinking, the present existence of Bigfoot does not exist, but at one time may have existed. The mistaken identity, in parentheses. This would debunk any video or evidence of Bigfoot in present day. I don't know if this person is agreeing with me or not, and I think that's kind of the fun part. That this would debunk any video or evidence of Bigfoot in present day, and I guess maybe it would. So the question is that bad? Do you believe that? Are you like, oh man, this guy totally debunked it if this is true? If it was mistaken identity? And I wouldn't say mistaken identity. I'm guessing this guy, well, he's on this page, so he probably does believe in Bigfoot. Okay. But mistaken identity suggests that there is a real Bigfoot, and all these stories are just parallel to that. Like, some people think that the Yeti was actually the Gigantopithecus, and the people got that mixed up with the real Yeti. Not, that's what the Yeti was, because a thing that looked a lot like a Yeti that we're well aware of the existence of lived where people say the Yeti was from, and those stories got circulated by the people that migrated from there to other places, and it completely makes sense. But no, what that was is people are just getting the two confused. Because there's all sorts of grainy footage of guys in Bigfoot costumes. I'm also not saying there's no Bigfoot. That's the other thing everybody missed. Like, they're like, with this line of thinking, there can be no such thing as Bigfoot. I never say that. I guess it's sort of what I'm suggesting in that, like I'm kind of suggesting maybe there's no such thing as griffins, but because, small children would get carried away by eagles that are like 10 times the size of the ones we have now, you could see where someone would kind of be like, there were griffins that would come from the sky and with their talons, and like, but a bird can't carry away a boy. That's not possible. I'm like, well, it must have been part lion or something. You know what I mean? You can see right where it would come from. It totally makes sense. And no one was on here, by the way, in any of these things I'm going to read through that suggested. Also, that sort of suggests that there's no such thing as griffins, which is ridiculous. But it's in the Bigfoot group, so it's not in the griffin. It's not in the is everything we've ever imagined real group, which I want to be part of. Like 100%. There's unicorns, there's dragons, there's mole men, there's cannibal, there's chuds and gremlins and leprechauns and everything you could possibly think of is definitely real, and to suggest otherwise is madness and the result of brainwashing by the liberal media or whatever the fuck they say about it. So, okay, this one, I don't quite know, but I like the existence of giants thing just reminds me. I used to know this guy that was like a shade on the fanatically religious side. We don't hang out anymore. And he was real hell-bent on that there were actual giants and like cyclopses and things, and that it was just, our anti-Christian government was always trying to cover up that we would find giant bones so that the people wouldn't think the Bible was real. Like, that was their plan. They're like, this book has a lot of crazy stuff in it. And it's like, wow, it wouldn't seem so crazy if the government hadn't hid all the Cyclops bones. I guess. I'm not being a pricky atheist or anything. I'm a spiritual man. There were certain things I've heard from people. So that reminded me of that. That has nothing to do with the video. Just that actually giants are real and it's a cover-up. They're not covering UFOs. By the way, that same guy didn't think there was aliens because they aren't in the Bibles. Like, the government couldn't possibly cover up aliens. Someone would have leaked it, but they're hiding the giants from us, which seems like they would be the hardest thing to hide because they're big. Like, at least the aliens are like that, that tall, and you can just kind of like, hide them in your sock drawer like E.T. or whatever. I don't know. We don't talk about E.T. But, yeah, giants are large. Like, they just put a big trench coat on them and... That's my Uncle Lurch. I don't know. All right, what else do we have here? Oh, someone that says that they have seen them. This is what I wanted to get to here. Someone really taking me down a peg about my Think Piece Bigfoot video. I've seen them up very close and personal. LOL. Ha ha ha, I've seen them. For me, it's not a matter of belief. It's actually pretty hilarious knowing firsthand that they are very real. All these extra words are a sign of confidence in what you're saying, by the way. It's not exactly how someone lies when you've caught them stealing candy bars. It's pretty hilarious that you would be so bad at your security job that you would accuse me, the guy who's famous for never stealing candy bars, of stealing candy bars. And then just doing that for like 15 more minutes and be like, yes, that's an innocent person talking. Don't steal those candy bars. Or do. Steal them from Walmart. Fuck them, I don't care. Okay, it's pretty hilarious. Knowing firsthand that they are very real and hearing people smugly say there's no evidence. LOL. Something to point out, I never was like, by the way, there's no evidence of Bigfoot, you dum-dums, and here's where I think he came from. No, I only talk about where the mythos probably originated from if you're being realistic and you understand a lot of things about that kind of stuff, because it's interesting to you and it's fun. Smugly say there's no evidence. I've been within 5 feet of one, a Bigfoot. Tried to hold the conversation, but the big guy just stared at me. Yeah. He wasn't being aggressive. Well, yeah, if you were within 5 feet of what a Sasquatch would be, some giant ape-man thing, if it was being aggressive, you would not be making this Facebook post. You would be Sasquatch poop by now. Okay. He wasn't being aggressive, just waiting to see what move I made. Yeah, you know what he was thinking. He saw it in his eyes and he was kind of wondering about you. After I talked to him for about 10 minutes, I wish he would have written down what that was too. Like, hello! Who do you see in the Super Bowl this year? Like, what was he asking Bigfoot? Maybe to grant him wishes. Do you think Bigfoot grants wishes? This guy probably should have wished for a new brain. No, I'm being mean to this stranger. Yes. After talking for 10 minutes, I started to walk away and he followed me. All the way back to the edge of the forest. Okay, so you hung around you found Bigfoot. There he is. And you just jawed at him for 10 minutes and then you're like, well, see you later, and just left. Like, maybe follow him when he leaves and see where he goes. Maybe there's other Bigfoots. Also, maybe, bring a camera with you when you go places. It's not like everyone has their phone with them all the time, man. Could have filmed this conversation. Okay. He started to walk away. He followed me all the way back to the edge of the forest. I would have been terrified by that, by the way. Like, I would have been shitting my pants, but this guy seems pretty tough and cool, and he knew Bigfoot wouldn't hurt him. I've seen plenty more. Oh, that's why he walked away. because he's seen so many Bigfoots. This one he just tried to talk to, and then he's like, well, he's just like the others. I guess I'll go home. I've seen plenty more, including one that used to hang out on the property of my old house. I wonder if this person is secretly John Lithgow, or the real whatever Mr. Henderson from Harry and the Hendersons. I don't feel like this is a joke. It'd be kind of funny if it was. Let's see. Someone else says something like, I'd like to think there might creatures like this out there, but the lack of biological evidence or clear, clean photo video is way too much. Okay, so that is a doubter of Bigfoots. Don't know what they're doing on the Bigfoot page. Then that same person from earlier, this is the same person that wrote that big thing, is responding to this person because this is important stuff. Actually, of course it starts with actually. Actually, a multi-year study fully mapped their genome with samples gathered around the world, tracing back their mitochondrial DNA thousands of years. So, we have Bigfoot DNA and we've traced it back thousands of years, maybe to the Gigantopithecus, is that what it could be? Look, and maybe there are some of those left. It would be, like, all of this is fun. I mean, I'm not like a big skeptic downer about it or anything. I just think that it's this part of it that's just so irritating with all of that stuff, because there's a lot of sort of simple Occam's razor, if you will, type answers to why people maybe kind of think there's a Bigfoot or what that thing could be or if it used to exist, and lots of crazy, there used to be dinosaurs, and I mean, that's kind of wilder than just kind of a big ape man. Like there used to be like a 100-foot tall, like carnivorous monster lizard that's actually more like a bird that would just run on 2 legs at 50 miles an hour. It's like, not at the same time as people, but they were there, and that's horrifying. So, the idea of a Bigfoot type thing isn't even all that weird. And then the idea of like, yeah, people actually had run into things sort of like this, and then they died out either because we hunted them or they were big. Big things don't always survive all that well either. It's easier to be a little mouse than like a great big thing. I feel like at a certain point, if people hadn't learned to build shelters and kind of communicate and stuff, that we definitely wouldn't have made it by, like if we had stayed semi-humanish but didn't learn all the crazy skills we have, there may have been a time where we completely disappeared. And I mean, we can still blow ourselves up, and I'm sure we will, but I don't know, just like kind of like a large unsustainable beast. But yeah, my point just being that the idea that we used to have contact with pretty monstrous things isn't even that weird. And I'll even go so far as to say that there could be, some remaining ones that maybe they got smart too. I don't know. Like maybe Gigantopithecus is kind of disappeared off the fossil record because it sort of changed a little bit into something else. And they realized that we're really dangerous and scary because we can talk and use weapons. And they kind of learned, they got to like just a certain point where they could communicate a little better amongst themselves. And they're like, all right, guys, we have to like actually make kind of a thing here where we stay away from these people. And if they started doing that 100,000 years ago, they'd probably be really good at it by now. So maybe they're out there somewhere. I don't know. I'm not saying that they're not or that they are, but the thing about that is like I could present that to someone on here and they would just get upset because they're like, yeah, well that makes too much sense and it's not. It's like it has to be their exact version of what Bigfoot is or it doesn't count. And a lot of these guys are like, oh, it's science. I'm doing science. You'll do your research, And I'm like, it's kind of unscientific to find out what Bigfoot maybe actually is and just ignore it because it's not close. That is the opposite of science. That is a little bit more like a ding, 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 religion, which is how some of these responses are. But let's see, what do we got? I think there's only like 2 more posts on here that got saved. There was comments on the video, too, that people just went back and deleted because I started getting sassy with them, and I think they weren't. I don't know what people expect, but I think sometimes, you see someone being like, blah, 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 I'm explaining something, and then like, okay, that guy's kind of dorky, I'm gonna taunt him, and then if you're watching this, and if you're watching this far, you know me, and I said many silly things, and I farted in that person's general direction, and I taunted him in a way that's frustrating to argue back with on purpose, because I've learned how to do that on the internet. It's fun. Not friends with a lot of my family members on Facebook anymore. I didn't have to block them. Yeah, that stuff didn't stay, because I was too sassy, I guess. I don't know. But so anyway, that's why we have these screen grabs, so we can watch it later and talk about it on here. And I can either come off as kind of funny or an asshole. Because I'm just shitting. I'm not giving out anyone's names. I am an asshole, but I'm also kind of funny. All right, so here's someone trying to figure out what kind of point I was making. I think he's saying it's like a psychologically inherited memory imprint. I don't know if that's what I was saying. Maybe that's a fancy way of being just like, oh, it became part of a mythos. But I certainly wasn't like, oh, people saw him so much that now they dream him, which that sort of implies, no. That'd be cool. And the genetic memory might be a thing. You jump at a spider even if you've never seen one before. It's like because they're, spiders were a death sentence a lot of the time and through all of humanity. And animals have instincts, like they know to do certain things. Where do those come from? It's like knowledge embedded in their DNA. So obviously, yeah, maybe, but that's not what I was saying here. I'll make a video about that. That seems real interesting. I'll talk out of my ass about that for a while. Because, just want you to be aware, none of these things are designed to be like, oh, I'm going to really learn something. All of these going forward are mostly like, the facts are factual, but it's just more like, hey, have you ever stopped to think maybe this was actually because of that? Like, I'm not going to tell you anything new. All the becauses and the things that happened, they're already there. But it's just me I never thought about it like that. It's fun. It's just a different angle, like this. Or maybe Bigfoot's real. I don't know. Or maybe I'm defending people. Maybe I'm saying he's more real than most people think, because most people think it's just kooks and crackpots. And I'm like, actually, there's some substance here. Y'all should be kissing my ass is what you should be doing. But I say that a lot. Okay, but anyway, if we see something we can't quite identify, we attribute Sasquatch qualities to those things. Nah, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that's where Sasquatch came from. But then, again, I think this is a little bit of like, well, clearly Bigfoot exists. And so we're just sort of mixing up these ideas. He's not explaining why we think he exists in the first place or anything. Of course not. I'm doing that thing I would need puppets for. I'm being the other person, and I'm not making a very good defining line between them. But it's not like I script these things. The vlog is just me until the camera runs out of battery, I guess. I don't know. Sasquatch. Okay, so he says, it's an interesting theory that you don't see very often. You know what? I'll take that. That's fun. And also, I'm not like getting a doctorate at a university off this theory, by the way. It's I want to just make that clear. I am not dying on this hill. I fucking don't care. I've literally only made the video because I was like, yo, like, this could work. It's a little exercise. You watch it because it's kind of interesting, and it's an excuse for me to hear myself talk and grow a mustache because it makes me look more like you should believe me. All right, we got one more reply to that. And this guy's like, interesting. Add this to then that. I don't know what he means there. But some of the oldest writing is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which, yeah, they think the Bible's just like a cheap ripoff of that. 2700 BCE, pretty long time ago. In it, Gilgamesh teams up with a large, wild man from the mountains who's covered in fur. Who does that remind you of? Okay, so this guy's kind of on my side. You know what? We're ending on an up note. Yeah, I guess I just felt the need to share that because and there's more, but I feel like when I make these contentious and weird things with the slightly higher than average YouTube production value because I just have video equipment around here, I put that out into the world and you can either watch part of it or not, but I think an interesting thing is starting to happen because the page is getting a little bit of traction. Thank you to everyone that subscribed. Please like and subscribe. You did not watch this far. But, oh God. But it's getting enough traction where it's starting to draw in people that I don't already know or don't know who SMB is or whatever it is. It's becoming a little bit of a thing. So now the interesting part will happen where I'm finally starting to get thumbs downs on stuff. Please give a thumbs up if you would. But it happens because people are seeing it who don't have any skin in the game with me. They don't care about who I am. Like, I'm just some well-spoken, devilishly handsome guy that's way too old to try to be a YouTuber. But the interactions I'm starting to get with these people, with people that just showed up, they might not even live in North America, I don't know, just out of the clear blue sky, and they have something weird to say, and they're going to spell it as poorly as they can. I feel like all of you need to know how I feel about that for some reason.